All right, everybody, welcome back to another Canada Immigration Live Q&A. I was away last week, but fortunately I had Alicia and Igor to hold down the fort. How you doing, Alicia?
I'm doing well, Mark, and glad you're back. But yeah, it was, I think maybe you got a little cold on the way. So,
Well, I think I took the snow with me when I went there because when I was when I touched down in Montreal on the Wednesday evening, it was nice out. I was excited. I thought, hey, this is great. There's no snow. I'll be able to, travel around. I was going to take a little bit extra time driving to Trois-Rivières and just look at the countryside. But when I woke up, there was 2 inches of snow on my vehicle. These big, massive flakes were coming down, and so I just had one goal, and that was to just get there safely on the roads because they were quite bad with this little rental car that I'd managed to find. And so, so it was a little bit of a downer being there. But hey, what do you expect with the middle of November? So it was what it is during this time of the year.
yeah. Yep, we can't complain. We had some nice days in Calgary, and it might snow today, but it's November.
Yeah, exactly. So I had the privilege, and I'll probably do a separate video just because it's worth taking the presentation and just spinning it into a YouTube video. I think it was on the golden age of Francophone immigrants, and at no time in the history of Canadian immigration that I'm aware of, at least at a federal level, has French language been more important for securing permanent residence outside the province of Quebec. And so those are the things that we talked about, how important it is if you are someone looking to immigrate to Canada and don't have any connections with Canada. Really, French language ability may be the only thing that's going to get you through. Now, there are targeted draws now, which play a role, but one of those targeted draws is even having French language ability. So it's been quite interesting, and preparing the presentation, I didn't really appreciate, I think, when I started, how important it really is. So we'll see how this plays out given everything that's happening from within Canada. And I know that many, many people are so disheartened. The last presentation that our minister here, Miller, gave, he confirmed once again that for you international students who are on postgrad work permits, there are no guarantees. And when we look at the levels plans that the government has, realistically, we're looking at a little over 200,000 spots for skilled economic immigrants in Canada in this coming year for 2024. And if we know, which appears to be the case, that there are almost 1 million international students in the country, and I don't know to what extent, if those are all just new approvals for just this year, 2023, I can't remember, Alicia, or if it's taking into consideration everybody that's here right now. But there is no way there's going to be room for individuals to transition to permanent residence for everybody to do that. And so the highest human capital you can achieve, maybe going through various provinces where the competition isn't as stiff. But I'll tell you, I feel very sorry for international students that chose to go to Ontario, which is virtually half of the total number of international students, and even then British Columbia. So we've got Minister Miller, who has basically confirmed that, hey, there's no guarantees. And really, right from the beginning, that was always the case. It was never anything different than that. But there was almost this wink, wink, nudge, nudge that, there'll eventually be a way to transition all of you through. And that was being held up by overseas education agents and even to some extent the schools here in Canada. So we'll see how this all plays out, and we'll see what Minister Miller here has to say going forward. But it's not looking great. Not at all.
Yeah. And Mark, I did have a consultant. I wanted to just highlight again, and I did talk about it last week as well, but everybody who is under these temporary public policies and they're a study permit, full-time student, and they're trying to also work, be so careful, right? Because what's going to happen is that even if you did qualify under those temporary public policies, as of next month, as of December, end of December of 2023, all those temporary public policies in terms of you being able to work full-time hours or anything over the regular 20 hours per week off campus, they end, they stop. And so be so careful. This does not continue. Be careful not to mess up your PGWP application. Be careful to stop working more than 20 hours per week as of January 1st, 2024. And if you're graduating, right, if your graduation is right in the brand new, in the new year, for those days up until you can actually get that final transcript and your letter of completion, you're allowed to work, but only 20 hours. And if you are working full time, you're going to need to downshift with your employer. Explain that all to them. Make sure payroll is going to be properly set up before that happens. Otherwise, you jeopardize your entire PGWP application. So please,
Yeah.
please be careful.
So many landmines out there. And I had, even this week, I had a tough discussion with another client. When you make decisions and, sometimes when people choose to kind of do it on their own, you just don't know sometimes what you don't know. And you can truly, honestly believe that you're doing everything that you need to satisfy immigration with whatever type of application you're submitting. But it's never the big things. And I say this repeatedly, it's always the little tiny things that you don't even know are an issue. And, to a large extent, that's why I created the Express Entry course. And then when I made the decision to switch it over to an actual masterclass, and I don't know if we can even see this here. Oh, I got to adjust this here, Alicia. I forgot that I've got just my ugly mug here. We better create a spot for Alicia in here. There we go. And we'll just add in, this is on the fly, guys. I've learned a few things over the years. There we go. Alicia's with me here now. So when it comes to like the Express Entry masterclass that I do, part of the reason that I did this was to allow people to come in and get questions answered. And it's amazing how often people will ask a question within the group. And our masterclass is going on right now. In fact, we're going to do the masterclass at 11 a.m. I had to move it. It was originally scheduled for 10 today. People, when they ask questions, I can't believe how often I get responses from other people that say, oh my goodness, that I had no idea. If I had proceeded forward, my application would have gotten rejected. And the only reason they realized it was an issue was because someone else asked the question. So I absolutely love these master classes. And obviously the course material itself walks you through everything, but just having that ability to kind of get together as a community and talk and share. And then obviously I'm there to clarify if, someone's questions, give them actual correct answers that they can then make whatever changes they need to within their application. But, you look online and you see Express Entry has been around a long time now, Alicia, and you look at how how many sites out there were maybe created in the early days of Express Entry, maybe in 2015, 2016, and have never been updated. And people, obviously, Google's going to keep pushing you to those sites that appear to have, the most popular information. But Express Entry evolves and it changes, and the policies of immigration, and how they implement and actually apply those policies when they're adjudicating these applications, it evolves as well. And so sometimes people are just relying on information that's just not correct, or maybe it never was correct, or maybe it was correct, and over time it's just you just don't do it that way anymore. So so I absolutely love this course. I love the masterclass sessions, and it's something that if I could do that all day, just like these live Q&As, I would be a happy camper. All right, let's give some shout outs here. Let's see who we got tuning in today. So we've got Romano. He's connecting from Waterloo. Welcome. Great to have you here. Amy. Hey, Amy. How you doing? He says, good morning, afternoon, Mark. Love the intro music. Great. Hey, we try to mix it up a little bit here. Jackie, hello to you. Good to have you connecting in. We've got Kumar. He says, good morning, sir. Good morning to you. We've got Valentino from Nigeria. Thanks for connecting in. I know it's fairly late over there on the other side of the world with a lot of you guys tuning in. Ahmed, hello, Ahmed, over in Iran. Great to have you. Thanks for connecting in. I think Igor connected with you yesterday, my friend. So I look forward to circling back and continuing forward with the work we're doing with you. So good to see you. Thanks for saying hello. Kumar also says, hey, Mark and Alicia. And we've got Diego, who actually is in the course. Are you not, Diego? Diego was in the masterclass just yesterday. So thanks for jumping in here. We've got Batoda, Hader from Iraq. Great to have you as well, Hader. We've got a really, really good mix of individuals. And we've got Namso as well from Nigeria. He says, you guys are doing a fantastic job. Thanks so much, Namso. We appreciate that. We've got Ravinder from India. Thanks for connecting in, Ravinder. This is a really great group we have, Alicia. Moyes, we've got also from India. And those of you who have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Oh, Diego, what do we got here? He says, "Hi, Mark. After all the questions I asked yesterday about eCooper, I received the golden email an hour after yesterday's masterclass. Thanks for all the value you provide." Oh my goodness, that is so awesome, Diego. I'm so happy for you. Sometimes, Alicia, people, everything's finalized, and you go into your tracker now. They've got this lovely tracker, and sometimes people see that their permanent resident application has been approved. They've got an eCooper number, but then they don't hear anything, and then they sit and they wait and wait. And I think, Diego, if I'm not mistaken, it was like a month and a half for you, and it's just torture, right? And so I'm so glad, Diego, that worked out for you. That is fantastic. Okay, Noah. Normally I don't pull this up, but it's quite comical. So Noah says, "Is IRCC high on drugs? Still no draw." Well, I don't know. Marijuana is legal in Canada now, so maybe. I don't know.
So what Igor and I were talking about last week was that it's interesting to look at the rates of the draws. And Igor was pointing out that on average, IRCC tends to invite about 10,000 applicants under express entry per month. But the timing of those draws is quite variable, right? So we have not had a draw since October 26th. The last one was that healthcare specific targeted draw. But really, there's now been a gap of almost a month. We're hoping maybe they will have a draw today or tomorrow. But if you do look historically, there was a gap in the past, right? So if you look between August to September, there was a pretty big gap, right? It was over a month when they paused draws from August 15th to the September 19th. So it's not, completely out of the ordinary, but it is true that it's difficult with these targeted draws because IRCC's been bouncing all over the place.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's see what else we have here. I think we've pretty much done all the shout outs that we need to. We're going to dive right into your questions. Hey, David, good to see you connecting in. We've got David Peters there. Great to have you connecting in, my friend. Okay, and Noah's venting. Okay, Noah, we'll let you have the one comment there, but we probably won't pull up your other comments, except those of you on YouTube will be able to see Noah venting. And I think he's just saying what everybody's feeling. All right, we've got a great group of questions here. We'll give a big shout out to Solomon, who's over in Ethiopia. We've got a really good representation from Africa today. And that's interesting, Alicia, because Stephen Murins had posted, I don't know if you saw, I wonder if I could pull it up. It was on good old Twitter, so I'm not sure if I can find it on Twitter. Let's see if I can log in. Basically, he showed what is happening with study permit applications in Nigeria and just the trends. Oh, it looks like I am able to get in. Okay, let's see if I can find it here. Let's see if we can jump in, and I'm going to pull this up, and then I'll share my screen once I...
And it is interesting, Mark, because one of the things that they talked about in their new plan forward was they heard feedback, but that there was, perceived bias in terms of applications.
Yep.
And so that's one of their mandates, is to try to remedy that.
Well, I thought it would be easier to find Stephen, but for whatever reason, it is not cooperating with me here. Let's see. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's see if we can find... We'll just pull up. I'll just share this with you guys. So this is just the Stephen's page here. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, right here. So the number of Canadian study permits being issued to Nigerians is starting to go parabolic. So you can see this issued. So in 2017, I know it's kind of small, but 2017, there were 2,147. So we're not even talking about refusals. These are just those that have been issued. So 2017, you can see 2020, obviously during the pandemic, it dropped right off. But then 2021, it increased to 6,000, a little over 6,000. Then it doubled in 2022 to 12. And then this year, from January to June alone, we're almost up to 18,000 approvals. And so it's interesting to see that they're actually listening. And I think maybe some class action. I don't know necessarily if there are any actual class action lawsuits. It's hard because people just each individual application is on their own merits, and so it's hard to kind of identify a particular class. But clearly, the trends were really tough, and it showed a definite bias. All right. Okay, let's jump to the beginning and let's start going through some of the questions. I know lots of people are wondering, is there going to be another draw? Well, we'll see, and we'll monitor it during the live even to see. But today's as good a day as any for us to see another round of invitations. Okay. All right, let's see where we will start here. We've got lots of PNP questions, and sometimes we can answer these, sometimes we can't. Okay, under BC PNP, are we only invited if we meet points? Okay, yeah. Alicia, do you want to touch this, just the reality of the PNPs?
So each PNP has a different scheme, and most PNPs have a provincial only outside of express entry process, and most of them also have, as a first step, you have to have a valid express entry profile, and then it's linked. So it's an express entry linked PNP application. And it's the same with BC. So BC has a stream for express entry linked applications, and then their stream that's non-express entry linked. And when you're looking at the BC PNP non-express entry linked applications, they have a provincial point system, right? Are you living around Vancouver area or outside? You get more points if you're living in northern BC, for example. So there are different requirements depending on which subcategory of the application you're looking at. In general, the express entry linked applications are going to be faster. They're processed more quickly because they're all kind of pre-vetted through the federal government, through IRCC. But you have to then qualify either for CEC, FSW, or FST. So as a basic requirement, you've got to meet those minimum eligibility requirements, have a profile that has a valid education credential assessment and your language test, and then you can go and apply for the provincial nominee program as long as you meet the eligibility requirements under that. If you don't qualify for express entry, then you've got to look at every sub-program and see whether you qualify there.
Yeah, and we spend a lot of time, you guys, doing consultations with people who are trying to figure out what options are available. I know this afternoon I was looking, Alicia, at some of the consults that I have scheduled, and I get a lot, for obvious reasons, of H-1B work permit holders who are actually now ready to travel to Canada to obtain those work permits. And so just a reminder to people, if you're asking questions about what do I do, what are the options available, head on over to our firm website. There's a link in the description below. Click on Speak to a Lawyer, and you can schedule an immigration consultation with us because of how we have the consultation structured. It makes it really easy for you to schedule one, and very rarely do you have to wait any lengthy degree of time. So if you do have those questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and please do it early on, because there's nothing worse than someone coming and they have 4 months left on their open work permit. They've burned up all of their post-grad. They've used these 18-month work permits, and now they have very few options. So it's always better, if possible, for you to connect in and do so early so that we can give you strategic direction. Okay, Marie says, from Mauritius, is the processing time generally faster for those who had a visitor visa in the past, traveled a few times to Canada, and are now reapplying because the visa has expired? So any difference in processing times if you're applying for a new, I'm assuming, visitor visa here?
I mean, theoretically, no, the processing times are the processing times, but practically, if you've come here before, you've had visas before, you're from a relatively low-risk country, you've proven your temporary intent, you've always complied with your requirements to go back home when you said you would, usually immigration is going to be able to cross-reference their notes and see your history. And so probably in terms of ease of processing, it's a little bit easier the more approvals you've had and the more you've complied with your, you stayed on the visitor visa for only a couple of weeks, you went back to Mauritius. So, it's practically probably a little bit more streamlined just because of the demographics of your application.
Yeah. All right. Okay, this one is from Yari and says, hi, Mark and Alicia, a COPER holder coming from a visa-exempt country. Should he apply for an ETA? So confirmation of permanent resident holder coming. Did you understand that question? They're obviously confused, but maybe you can just touch on it quickly.
Yeah. So, okay. If you, and I'm still
Because they
not
don't say
sure
if
if
they
it's
have a
visa
permanent
exempt.
resident card. Like, yeah, it doesn't indicate if they have a permanent resident card here.
Yeah.
So,
So, Jerry, I'm a little bit confused about whether you already have your COPR, right? Whether it's been issued to you already, or whether you um, have the visa, the confirmation of permanent residence, in terms of they've sent you the landing visa and you're coming to get your COPR. So, depending on your country of citizenship, you can either be from a visa required country or an ETA required country. And if you are from a visa required country, they would have asked you for your passport as part of your express entry process. You send in your passport, they put a visa landing stamp saying that you're coming on a permanent resident landing visa. When you get to the airport, then they will examine you and then they will issue you, they'll sign off on a physical COPR, a confirmation of permanent resident document itself. If you're asking you already have a COPR, but maybe you didn't wait for the PR card and you decided to travel, then that becomes a sticky situation, because if you already have your confirmation of permanent residence, then in order to get back into Canada as a permanent resident, you have to have a PR card or you have to have a PR travel document. So be really careful about that.
perfect. I'm going to pull this one up from Moise Khan, because I'm always quite surprised. I think people, when they watch the videos, very few people actually go to our law firm website to see what we do. So we do things different, Moise. So Mark, do you or your team provide second eye service where applicants can showcase to you our application before submission to IRCC? Well, Moise, this is the only way that we work with our clients. So this is the whole concept that we have with our direct lawyer to client collaboration. So the beauty of this whole process is that you retain control, but you get the best from what we offer. So many of you don't need us to fill in forms for you. You have the ability to do that. But what we do is really a forensic evaluation of everything. We look at all of your forms, the documentation. We do it all through video screen shares, and but you retain control. So you get the best of both worlds. I know people are so frustrated with when they hire a representative, they don't know what's going on. Once the application is submitted, half of the time they don't even get a chance to review it. So in these types of situations, it's really, like, from our perspective anyways, we truly believe this is the best of both worlds. And this is one of the reasons why, our clients just love it so much, because they get our assistance, our direction, our guidance, all the way up to, uploading and submitting together with them. But we don't have access to their passwords. They log in through their own portals and they have control. And we're always here to provide as much or as little support as needed. So, so definitely the answer is yes. And I strongly encourage you to book a consult. And that's how the process always starts with our firm, always starts with a consultation.
And I will
Okay.
add
Oh,
to
yeah.
that quickly, Mark, that it's, what we don't do is say in an hour-long consult,
Yes,
we're going to
yes,
review
yes.
your entire express entry
Yeah,
application. It
yeah,
is just not humanly possible
yeah.
to do a professional, thorough legal analysis in an hour. It is not possible. And so when you start with a consult, you'll meet with us, we'll talk through your application, you ask questions, we review it with you in terms of what your questions are, where the targeted things are that you want to focus on. Do you need assistance? Yes. Then you're going to retain us, and then we go through that collaborative review. And
Yeah.
this is where we work with you one-on-one. You upload all your documentation to a shared folder. We're going to, like, with a fine-tooth comb, look at everything that you're putting into your express entry profile, look at all your supporting documents. And we're going to be super critical. We're going to be looking at, well, you said this here, but this happened in the past, and your PGWP says this, and your study permit had
Yes.
this. So
Yeah.
how do we actually make this application make sense so that you're not misrepping and you're not missing anything?
Yeah. And that's really, Alicia's hit the nail on the head. So, like, some people, they know other firms offer a review service. Well, this is not a review service. In other words, where you just say, here's my application, take a look and give me feedback. We literally spend hours with you going through everything together. And a perfect example is I'm, reviewing your information and I say, okay, I see you've answered this question this way. Why did you put that in there that way? And then the individual says, well, I did it because I thought the question was asking this. And then I say, well, an officer would interpret it that way, which could be quite bad. And so let's change it together right on the spot. And so that's the beauty of it. And, and like the best part in my mind as well is that when you have two people looking at it, it's far, far less likely that anything is going to get missed when you're going through it. And I'll tell you, Alicia, I sleep very well at night because I don't have to worry about, oh, did my assistant or paralegal miss something? And then when I was doing my quick review, did I miss something that's going to result in a refusal? And let's face it, express entry and immigration these days is extremely volatile. It really is. All right, let's jump back. David, David's got a question here. Okay, I know this is a very specific question, but you know exactly about my circumstances. Yeah, I do, David. Acknowledgement of receipt received in June. March of June, MR request and done in October. Work permit expiring in 5 months. Is it okay to apply for a bridge? Yeah, you can. Absolutely, David. Absolutely, you can apply for a bridge. And you've seen with the PNPs, the processing times are just quite high, right? And so I was hoping that things would go quickly, but it is what it is, right? We're just kind of in this vortex where nothing is going fast. And in fairness, I've been a little critical with IRCC in my tweets the last couple of days. Alicia, I saw Tamara post that LMIAs in some instances are taking 5 months.
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
5 months to get approval. And I'm sorry, like it's just unacceptable.
Well,
Especially
okay,
when you move to this online system. Okay, here Alicia's gonna. She's
to be fair,
the sober
I
thought
mean,
here.
I did respond to Tamara on the listserv this morning because she had filed this application back in July, I believe, and we filed an application in October. And to be fair to IRCC, they asked for payment the next day, and that LMIA was approved within 48 hours. So that was the fastest dual intent LMIA that I've ever had approved. And it might just be that there's some backlog in the system on older files. I don't know, but we'll have to see. But it's true, if they're coming on to 5 months of processing of LMIAs, that is a problem if there's
That's
some
a
that are
huge
stuck in the
issue.
queue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only reason I bring it up, I think everybody has an anecdotal experience that varies across the board. And that's one of the hard parts is the lack of consistency. Our bookkeepers filed an LMIA and have not received the payment request. And this was 4 weeks ago. So you can imagine them sitting there wondering, what the heck is going on? Did I do this right? Did I not submit the application properly? And so, yeah.
What I'm wondering, Mark, for LMIAs is whether ESDC is starting to triage employers who have had a prior LMIA approval
Possible.
versus ones who haven't. And because
A
that
brand
new
new.
trusted employer is coming out next year, it might be that they're starting to bifurcate, and people who have LMIAs that have been approved, who are meeting the new program, enhanced kind of review requirements, are now going to get their approvals in faster. Because in this case, my employer had a prior LMIA approved within the last year. So.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to pull up Diego here. So this is an interesting question, and I know lots of people ask this to me. So until yesterday, I had a closed work permit, and this company gave me the letter stating that they will keep me employed for 1 year after PR, which is what you need to have the job offer. Can I change employers during that year if I wanted to? So what's your view on this, Alicia, when people have job offers supporting their permanent residence and the company says, we'll keep you employed for a year, but the worker maybe, well, let's give Diego the benefit of the doubt, has a better opportunity, in his area, in his industry with another company. And he now, let's say, has his permanent residence completed, free to do whatever, or are people locked in, Alicia, for the 1 year? They can't go anywhere else.
Yeah, and I have a very different answer depending on the key information that Diego just said, that he got his e-coper. So, if Diego had not actually gotten the signed electronic confirmation of permanent residence, then I would say, hey, it is risky to switch employers, because technically immigration could claw back those 50 arranged employment points if you decide to switch employers and you're no longer meeting those arranged employment requirements. However, Diego said, good news, he got his e-coper yesterday.
Yes.
And so the moment that you become a permanent resident is the moment you get that signed confirmation of permanent residence, whether it's electronic or a physical signed copy. Once you are a permanent resident of Canada, you are a free agent. You are able to work for any company that you want in any province that you want. But do keep in mind that if you did a provincial nominee application and you're trying to move to Quebec, that can be a lingering problem. And if there's an element of misrepresentation, right? If you told the government something and you never intended to follow through, that could be an issue. But in general, if you get a better offer, the company still intended to employ you. They made good on their province, but if you are promised, but if you got a better offer from another employer, technically you are able to do that as a confirmed Canadian permanent resident.
Yes. Okay, Parva is asking an Alberta Advantage Immigration Program question. He says, I'm on Alberta payroll after moving from Quebec, working remotely for a new Edmonton registered company. So the key here is that I guess Parva is in Alberta, but working remotely for a new Edmonton registered company. I don't know if that company's actually, does it have a physical presence? We'd have to figure those things out. And you said 9 months. This is where you run out of characters. So you try to make it fit, right? 9 months. There's the code with NOC 2172, which is the NOC 2016, but we can figure that one out. Do I qualify for the Tech Pathway program? So Parva, this is a classic example where Alicia and I will very, very frequently, let's see if I can get the sound. Oh, the bell just was a little bit delayed. We ring that bell and we say, hey, we recommend that you slide over here to our site and click on Speak to a Lawyer and book a consult. And then we can actually sort through it because there's a lot going on there with your question, and the employer, everything. We need a whole lot more information, and obviously YouTube, the comment section only allows so many characters, and we wouldn't provide this really is legal advice. So but generally speaking, Alicia, do you have any just general information that we can try to help Parva with, at least an understanding the program?
So in general, Alberta Advantage Immigration Program is really quite sticky on the fact that it has to be an Alberta-based employer. So the employer has to have physical operations. And I'm not sure, you said registered address. I'm not sure if the company actually has a workspace in Alberta and if employees go there to work. You said that you're remote, but I don't know where you're physically residing, right? So it's also important that the company be actually physically incorporated and have a municipal business license somewhere in Alberta, and that there is an expectation under your offer of employment that you will be coming to work in Alberta, that it's required for you to work in Alberta. So those are things to think about for the Alberta PNP programs. Especially in tech, they're quite mindful that people are trying to parachute in from all over the place, and they really want to have a legitimate intent to continue to reside in Alberta once you get your application approved or your nominations. So they really want to see that you have an intent to physically move, to set up roots, to have, a physical residence, to maybe have your kids going to school here. Those are all things that are important.
Yes. I'm just going to pull this one up here. It's kind of almost aligned. So KK says, my PNP is accepted under the Alberta Tech Pathway, and my medical's been passed and biometrics have been completed. My question is, if I want to change my job, can I or not? So this is exactly, takes to the next level, a practical example of what Alicia was just talking about.
And so this is especially difficult because Alberta Tech is a subset of making sure that you do the Alberta Express Entry required kind of subcategory, and then it's a subcategory within that. And one of the requirements is that's why the last person asking a question was talking about the NAICS code as well as the NOC code. So not only does your employer need to be within one of the listed industries, your occupation has to be within one of the listed industries. So there's two things going on. And then that employer has to sign off, and that offer of employment has to be acceptable, and they have to show that they meet the requirements. So it's not just you, it's also the employer. So if you want to change employers under the Alberta Tech Pathway, but you've already got a PNP nomination, you're going to have to go back to the AINP and say, Is it okay if I switch my employers? Is the new employer going to still meet all the program eligibility requirements, still have the right NAICS code, and will the AAIP actually transfer that nomination to the new employer and approve it or not? And so just be super careful. Don't do anything until you check with them. And if they're not going to approve that, then you are probably stuck waiting it out for a while.
All right. I'm just going to pull this one up. Lots of people are have asked these questions as well. So Prashant obviously has got a background, and he says, who do I book a consult with? Well, the thing within the firm is that when you book a consult with one of us, you really are getting all of us. We share insight all the time. We share experiences. We share our legal knowledge, and that's really the benefit. So whether you book a consult with myself or Alicia or Igor, ultimately we all work collaboratively together as a tight-knit group. So it doesn't really matter, Prashant, who you book the consult with. All right, let's jump. We've got a bunch of other ones. Okay, let's do some speculating just for fun. Alicia, what do you think the future of the RNIP? Think they're going to extend it? Think it'll become permanent?
And it's interesting, Mark, you and I have gone down to Claire's home. That was one of the
Yep.
locations for RNIP. And we were listening to the immigration program officers who are actually trying to champion this with IRCC. And I was really impressed with both of those
Yeah,
individuals. I
they
think
were.
they really cared. They're very passionate. They are doing the hard work. They are going out to every single community that's part of the rural and northern immigration program. And they are trying to make it work. And so far, everything has seemed to come back with positive reviews that people are staying in the communities, that it's making those communities more vibrant. And if it's working well, then there's a solid grounding to make an argument that it should become a permanent program within IRCC's kind of repertoire. So we'll see.
Yep. Yep. And I think if you look at the previous minister's statements, and if we go back and we look at Minister Fraser here, he issued a TR to PR pathway kind of plan. And I guess it would have been last year. And within there, they emphasized heavily the desire to get people to move out of the larger centers into rural areas. So if whatever Minister Fraser said here is also being adopted by his replacement here, Minister Miller, then I would say that those programs, it's more likely than not that they are going to continue. I can't see any reason why not. And let's face it, IRCC really likes transitioning the decision making to someone else, and they just do the background security screening. So I'm going to vote yes, but ultimately, who knows these days? All right. Sakar says, I worked for a small scale org for 8 months. I was paid in cash. Okay. And this org is now closed. So these are this is a classic express entry question. It's something that I actually created a document within the course for called What to Do If You Can't Get a Perfect Reference Letter, essentially, all the different things you can do. And that's in the course. But he says, I don't have any documents from this org. Should I need to call this in personal history? Points not claimed for this. So what are your views on this one, Alicia?
Yeah, and so keep in mind that anything that you put in your work history, you're going to have to back up with employment records if you get an ITA. But if you have something where it was paid employment, even if you can't prove it, put it in your personal history, right? So in your personal history, they're not going to ask you for your payment records and your proof of employment and your letters from your employer because you're not claiming points for them. But you do have an obligation to be honest and complete and truthful in saying exactly where you were and what you were doing for, the last, well, going back to age 18 possibly. So just be careful that yes, you do disclose everything properly in your personal records.
I'm going through these questions, Alicia, and I'll be honest, you guys are rock stars today. This is really tough. There's a lot of really, really good questions that I know will benefit a large number of the people watching. And so if for whatever reason I skip your question, please understand that there's a lot here that are actually really good. And we're trying to get through as many as we can, but we are limited to the time frame that we set here. So, okay, let's tackle... Okay, I'm going to pull this one up for Amy here. And we get this a lot now, too, when we work with clients who obtain their permanent residence. Just like Amy says, now that I'm a permanent resident, how can I bring my parents here and keep keep them with me, essentially. So
Mhm.
what's the advice you're giving people these days, given what we know, Alicia? Like immigration
Yeah.
has said just recently, and we've heard statements that say they've got enough to meet the quota till 2025 or something for parental sponsorship from the back in the 20 when was it 2020?
2020.
The expression of interest. So
Mhm.
what would you tell Amy here?
So basically, there's only one way to bring parents, and that's through a parent sponsorship or parent and grandparent sponsorship permanently. However, and this is what Mark was alluding to, the chances of being able to bring your parent permanently are almost like winning a lottery. And
Yeah.
basically, it is a lottery now, but it's even stacked against people because the lottery only opened, for a brief window of time in 2020. You had to get your expression of interest in there. You had to prove as the Canadian child or grandchild sponsoring your parent or grandparent that you met all the eligibility requirements for the 3 previous years, which really means that you had to have been here basically from 2016 earning tax income up until 2020 and then be able to prove last 3 years of CRA tax documentation. They are only pulling when they open up the floodgates and they start doing new invitations. They're only pulling from the pool of applicants who put in an application or a notification of eligibility interest in 2020. So it is almost impossible, and we don't know what the system will look like for next year. But if they keep pulling from that pool from 2020, it's impossible to bring a new application forward to sponsor your parent or grandparent for PR. However, what immigration is trying to push people to do practically is just to apply for a parent or grandparent super visa. And this is not permanent residence, it's just a temporary resident application, but it is long term. So it'll be valid for 10 years as long as the passport is valid for 10 years, and your parent or grandparent can come up to 5 years at a time, which is a really significant chunk of time. The catch is that you have to make sure that your parent has properly got the insurance coverage, healthcare coverage, that's over, a certain monetary limit, and that covers repatriation, and that basically they're making sure that there's private healthcare insurance for elderly that are coming under this parent and grandparent, and there's some sort of there are financial requirements for the sponsoring child as well to prove that they will be helping take care of their parents.
Yes. All right, I'm going to pull this one up here. Christian says, for the PNP, if someone was in Canada last year and left just for 1 week, the person should do another medical exam before submitting on the portal for non-express entry PNP.
So, well,
Just going to pull this up here.
normally not.
Yeah.
So there are some countries that if you've gone to that country and you've stayed there for 6 months or more within the last period of time, it could be a risk because it's a country usually where TB is a higher risk. And so they want to do medical surveillance on that. But normally it's only if you have resided continuously in one of the countries on the designated country list for 6 months within a period of time, usually the last year. So normally, if you've just gone for 1 week, that shouldn't affect you unless you are working as a medical professional and that's something specific to your job that could affect you. So normally, a week vacation somewhere is not going
Yeah.
to require you to get a new medical.
Yeah. And one thing I want to point out is for express entry purposes, you don't need it up front anymore. Okay. And then if we look back here, and this is still, as far as I'm concerned, is still valid for in Canada applicants, which I have to assume is the case for you. They put a temporary public policy, and that policy for IMEs is in place until October 6th of 2024. So if you completed your medical within 5 years of submitting your new application, you may be exempt from completing another one if you meet all of the conditions. So you applied or applying for permanent residence or temporary residence. So it's comprehensive here. You already live in Canada. Well, a trip away for a short period of time is likely not going to indicate that you no longer live here. It's just a trip away. You completed your medical in the last 5 years, and the medical basically was passed. So there's no indication of the things Alicia was talking about. So the question then becomes, Alicia, in these situations when you're uploading documents and there's a spot for an immigration medical, what do you do? And from my perspective, you guys, I always take the position of literally almost copying this page and including it as a reference and saying, further to your instructions, I have completed my medical 2 years ago. I've included a copy of it. It has my IME number and everything that you're requesting. And if you need me to do another one, let me know. And so, what are your thoughts, Alicia, on this? How do you typically approach this? Just given these policies that we have here.
And it's true. They said, upfront medicals are no longer required for express entry, but it's still giving you an upload spot, which is very unsettling, right? So some of my clients have said, hey, you know what, I'm just going to do the upfront medical anyways if they hadn't done them in the past, just because they don't want to have delays on the second stage and they're fine to pay the fee again. They don't care. But if you're not going to do that, then take a screenshot, put it in your PDF document, show that, upfront medicals are no longer required, show that temporary public policy on the fact that you can use older medicals. The only thing that I would say is if you are a medical professional, if you're working in an occupation that requires you to have a valid medical, then of course, because your work permit is going to have a condition on it, if you do need a new medical to update so that your work permit doesn't have a condition saying you're not authorized to work in healthcare with elderly, then just keep that in mind.
Yes. Okay. Andre says, hello, Mark and Alicia. In case my employer supports me for the immigration and ready to provide me with an LMIA closed permit, will I receive 50 additional points for express entry, or I need to work at least a year? So maybe you can kind of clarify that job offer world.
And Andre, I created a video on this. It's a short little explainer video. It's got some nice graphics, and I also have an article. So there's an article on our blog about whether you can claim those 50 job offer arranged employment points. And if your employer does have a valid LMIA and you actually obtained a work permit, so you actually have a work permit that has your employer's name on there, on the document itself, and your employer also says that they are going to agree to continue to employ you, they intend to continue to employ you for another year after you get your permanent residency, then right away you qualify for those 50 arranged employment points without having to wait the whole year. The circumstance where you do have to wait the whole year is if you're on an employer-specific exempt LMIA. So let's say you did an intercompany transfer, or you're here under a free trade agreement, so it has the employer's name on your work permit, but it wasn't LMIA based. In those circumstances, you have to have already worked for that employer for a year, and the employer needs to continue to agree to employ you for another year after PR before you can claim those 50 points.
Yes. Malik is talking here about the same thing that Diego went through. So my tracker shows a COPRA ID with expiry date. What does this mean? I've not received any emails about my application. The IRCC accountant has final decision with 18th of October, application in progress. So understand, Malik, this is exactly what Diego went through, and Diego had to wait a month and a half. It was quite a while. So patience and hang in there. I think that's the best way to describe it. Okay, Jatin says, hello, I've worked for 1.5 years continuous, 40 hours a week for one employer under the same NOC. But for 1 week, Alicia, I worked 20 hours. So am I eligible to meet the MEC for FSW? So, and this comes down to anyone who has any kind of a little bit of a break in time. So do you think, and obviously, guys, we just give you our thoughts on this. And, the law, it's somewhat vague when it comes to these little breaks or work history or hours of work. But in this type of a situation, Alicia, where you just have 1 week where it dipped to 20 hours and 30 hours obviously is full time, do you see any concern with this in the context of an express entry application?
And Jatin, I think the key is that you're saying you worked there for 1.5 years, right? So you worked there for over a year. It's not like you only have 51 weeks or something like that, and then you're not meeting it for the 1 week and you're short of your full 1 year, 52 weeks. So, if you are for sure worked 1.5 years and everything else was 40 hours and you only have 1 week that was 20 hours, disclose it, right? Put it in your letter of explanation and don't try to hide the fact. But as long as you do that properly, because you have the year and a half at the 40 hours and there's only 1 week that was off, it would be difficult for me to see IRCC refusing on that basis.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would be really tough if for them to take that position. Okay, let's shift gears to family class here. So Laura asked this question, and I actually have a consult coming up with a couple. They're a same-sex couple, but they're common law, and they don't live in the same country. And in fact, they'd indicated that in the consult intake form, they'd indicated that the person was called in for the one woman was called in for an interview, and there's a real bad LGBT prejudice and persecution in the country. And the visa officer was very critical and they described the officer as being rude and just looking for a reason to reject. And in the end, they got a refusal. So we're going to have to chat about that. But this happens. And so Laura says, and people think, oh, it's a spousal. There's no problems. It's so easy. You can just do it yourself. I hear this all the time. And then we get consults like this, right? And we have Laura. So Laura says, how do IRCC calculate for refusing a PR visa as they think the relationship is not genuine? So what are some of the typical, factors, I guess, that can cause people problems when they're submitting these applications?
Yep.
And this doesn't say common law or marriage here. So that's another factor, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So some of the things that I talk about with my spousal clients right away is I try to get to know them. What are your ages, right? If one person is vastly older than the other person right away, that could be a red flag. What is your background? If one person has 3 degrees or a PhD and the other person hasn't completed high school, that could be a red flag. What about your religious affiliations, right? Is one family going to be very religious in one particular religion that normally doesn't mesh with another religion? Because that's a red flag. Are your families supportive of the relationship? That's another thing. Do you have evidence that they've attended the wedding? Do you have evidence that they're writing letters of support? Do you have photos with family and friends over the years? Those are things that could be a red flag if the families are not supportive. What about financial backgrounds, right? What if one person comes from a very wealthy country and the other one doesn't? What about language issues? What if you don't actually speak the same language? That's a red flag. So these are all things that immigration officers will definitely look at. They'll also look at prior family composition, like if you were married in the past and divorced in the past, if you've sponsored people in the past, if you've got kids from prior relationships, does the other person have kids from prior relationships? All of those are factors that they look at to see whether this could be a genuine relationship or a marriage of convenience for immigration purposes.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think that was a great question to end on. And we want to express appreciation once again to all of you for contributing to our Canada Immigration Live Q&A today. If you did not get your question answered, maybe I had skipped it because it was just specific and you really needed to book a consult. We encourage you to do that, to slide over to the website and do that. And once again, I'm right in, Alicia and I are in the midst of recording podcast episode that relate to all facets of working in Canada, right from the temporary foreign worker program all the way through. And so we're working through the International Mobility Program, but if you have not yet subscribed to the Canadian Immigration Podcast, please do that as well. We've got a really solid series on business immigration that covers literally all aspects of the different kinds of work permits. So if you are looking to come to Canada, you're wondering what work permit options are available, that's a good spot. If you have a company who's looking at maybe extending a job offer or wondering how to get the work permit, this series is just full of tips and strategies for helping you navigate your way through that. And then remember as well. Free. Oh, yes, exactly. It's all free. The podcast absolutely is all free, as well as this that you see every week. And then the Express Entry course, we also have study permit course and spousal sponsorship course. In particular, we encourage you to check those out if you're looking at getting a little bit more help with your applications. And right now, like I said, I've got 2 more days of live masterclasses. And the cool thing about this is when you register for the Express Entry course and you get access to the over 10 hours of on-demand content, you can basically pick and choose the parts that you are struggling with or you need assistance with. And then on top of it, you have access to the actual masterclass sessions, not just for the 13th through the 16th, but any future masterclass that I have. And for instance, Diego, who connected in the beginning of the masterclass, the beginning of the live Q&A today, he had taken the subscribe previously and had gone through and now has more questions. So remember, that's just one other added value, is that you can come back so many times as you want for these masterclasses until you get through. So keep that in mind. And then, as always, on our firm website, we have a ton of information here to help guide you through our blogs and our other resources that are available. So definitely check those out, and there's more information there. All right. Thanks so much, Alicia. And thank you all for joining us today. We wish you guys all the best. And as of right now, I don't see a round of invitation yet. So we're still waiting to see what immigration is going to do. All right. Take care.